All right, welcome back. So what we're trying to accomplish now with this lesson is to do an active diagram with a back view. So back view of the torso with maybe a little bit of pelvis and a little bit of leg, but mostly just back. I'll include a little bit of the head. So what I'm doing now is just working on gestures, rough, nothing exact, just to get a feel for the pose I think I might want to do. So these are meant to be very quick, very instructive for me and communicative. And then that's about it in terms of what I want for it. So I'm thinking about the head. We're in a side view of the torso and the head's pulled forward, but the arms are pulled way back. And then I'm thinking about maybe twisting the back a little bit here, coming down to the oblique and then getting on maybe to the pelvic unit in through here with the buttock now, glute showing through here a little bit, and maybe that leg pulled back a little bit. So just exploring composition. This is a very old technique. When I'm talking old, I'm not talking like 10 years ago. I'm talking 650 years ago with the Renaissance masters, and then on to the Baroque and the Flemish masters, Rubens, who did, many of them did very abstract, scribbled kind of gestures to get into a pose that they wanted. So keep it loose, keep it light, like I'm doing, and let's feel our way through what we want to do. So this is actually more of a back view, and so I'm pulling the arm and pulling the leg back to give the back a little bit more bulk. As well as I pull. Now I'm pulling that lat over down to the buttock, pulling the arm over, and then seeing what I want to do for this. Getting a little bit of the lat now, getting it bulkier, oblique, trying to figure out the head, and keeping it loose. Remember this, the entire process, all of this from start to finish is out of your head completely. The concept through the final finish is testing yourself in what you know. Now, can you use a skeleton? By all means. Can you have your écorché if you have one? By all means. What if I don't have any of those? Use your photo reference for the skeleton or an écorché. Keep it close, keep it handy, and remember, you want to rely on your knowledge rather than imagery or from life. So this tests you in a different way than you might have not been tested before. So that's why I like doing active diagrams. Sometimes they're a little clunky, sometimes they're not so great. I struggle a little bit with, in the final version, the head a little bit, even though I cut it out for composition's sake. But I draw it out of screen a little bit, and I was not conclusive on the position that I wanted with the head. So you'll see that as we come to that a little bit later. So I'm finalizing that. You can tell where I move the arms in different positions, up and down, and I'm going on to the next one. I may or may not, like that one. So it's all about exploring. So explore it with me. These are just more to be, quite frankly, just to be shown. You don't have to draw these with me. But when we settle on our final idea, then you want to draw along, if that's what you want to do, want to draw along with me. But if you're in YouTube land, you can do really what you want. If you're my students, that's a different time frame and place of study. These are meant to be copied and drawn from, and then later on you build up into your own. That's the point, is to get to your own explorations. Let these be diagrams, demonstrations, active demonstrations, as long as active diagrams, and you learn how to learn through this process. I've gotten many emails over the course of time here that asks, what do I do now? Once I do the diagram, how do I apply it? Well, you apply that knowledge by doing the diagram in your sketchbook or wherever you're drawing over and over again until you can do it out of your head. Draw bones, draw muscles, know where they originate and know their insertions, and draw them until you are exhausted and you know them kind of backwards and forwards. So this other sketch, I had an idea of looking up at the figure with the neck pulled and arms, and I realized it was going to hide most of the torso in foreshortening. So I discarded it, gave up on it, and now working with this one, you're going to see where the figure's kind of bent a little bit, supine, really if it was pulling up, it would lean on those erector spinae. And if it was coming down, the rectus abdominis and the obliques would certainly help. Anytime you clench your stomach, in any type of convulsion, whether it be digestive or whether it be through stress, you're using your rectus abdominis area, your obliques. And all the muscles underneath the rectus abdominis, the transverse areas, there's internal abdominis muscles as well, both in the front and the back, the deeper muscles, the transverse spinalis as well. So now getting on to the next video or the next section of this, I didn't like any of this. And so I decided to go ahead and do another round or another one. And I think I get pretty close to what I want here. What I want is a little bit of the back relatively here twisting at the lat, so a little contrapposto, and the head looking up a little bit, being overlapped a little by the trapezius area of the torso or the back, and the arm up with the deltoid coming through, and then finding the center of the back in gesture, and having the arm twist a little bit, the left arm back towards it. So a very uncomfortable contrapposto, very Baroque kind of position to get into, and then laying on what would be the scapula. Again, I'm getting just a very quick idea of what I want to do here. Nothing is definitive. Don't worry if it's scratchy and sketchy and if it's incorrect. It's not meant to be a final product, but it's meant to be of where do I want to compose things? Where do I want to put things? Where do I want to show my viewer, my audience? In this case, for me, what kind of a diagram, active diagram, do I want to do that shows off the back in a more dynamic way beyond just the front, back, and side view of the muscle forms that we've grouped together to call the front and the back of the torso? That's important because this goes beyond the diagrammatic learning into more active learning, and also drawing from, of course, your imagination, which is pretty important. Notice that I'm making my center line in my back. It's too far to the right. That needs to be pushed greater to the left of the back to show more of the perspective of the back to the right. So that's obviously would be incorrect in just a little sketch, but it's not worth correcting so much as it is just noticing. And then when I get on to the end game of the full diagram, you gotta have it. So just throwing on the scapula a little bit here, and with the deltoid, where the arm would be, and I think that's going to settle on a nice pose to show off. And I think I include some of the knee to the calf and the foot for the final product as well. But I try to crop in mostly to the back and a little bit of the hip, and the head is not as important, even though I never really settled on where I truly wanted the head. So that's kind of it. All right, let's go on to now the longer term diagram. Okay, so here we are now starting the longer one with the image down below to give us the idea of what we're going for. Remember that thumbnail sketch is our idea. So it takes us into what we can do with this pose. And I'm going to leave off most of the head because I never really settled on a head position, and I think I would confuse you if I left it in. It was like 2 or 3 spots and to tinker with it, and ultimately it wasn't important. So that's why I cropped out the head. So again, now we're starting with a gesture of the back, and you can see me tinker with the head a little bit. But the design line of the back, the first line I drew was really the spine, and I'm thinking anatomically about it, but I'm also, and more importantly, thinking about the actual design of the whole thing. Its movement, its flow, its gesture, and so it can be more active than that which is truly kind of anatomical for its needs. So now getting the back, the kind of trapezius to start to work. I'm feeling that through the upper back. We're going to be fairly true to the thumbnail, even though what we have, I change it. You'll see me change things often. So getting kind of where The end of the trapezius would be roughly in the beginning of the deltoid, and or the scapula would certainly get close to being and through their area. Feeling out the arm above, you can't really see that. This is about the back. But as you do your active diagram, don't again add more extremities to your drawing. You don't have to go and render them fully. That'll be a full body kind of diagram. And that's a great test of your knowledge. All of these are meant to be testers as you're drawing. So follow along with me. You can sketch it out, slow it down, listen to what I'm saying, or you can turn the video off. Feeling out the fullness of the back. That's the fullness. Now the left and the right of that downward trend is the rib cage, but also I'm really thinking about, because it's so broad, the rib cage and really the lats too as well, since it tends to be broader in that area as they stretch and bulk through. Getting a feeling of the leg, the direction of the leg, left part of the back into the oblique, the center of the back, moved over and pulled down. So yes, I'm thinking anatomically, but I'm also just thinking about communication and form through here, kind of feeling my way of where maybe the pelvis box is going to be here, and you'll see me move it down a little bit and around, but the general location is there, the general perspective. So I've got this figure in a little bit of a stretched pose, and if I had to do it again, I would definitely set on the head. Actually, instead of looking up, I would have it looking down to the left. That would give me even more movement. So you can see the head in the thumbnail sketch is up to the right. I would move it down, keep it in the same relative position, but show the left side of the head. That gives it a little bit more dynamic movement from the spine through the left. So now in the drawing, I'm working with finishing the calf, feeling out now the center part of the spine as we're working here. Feeling a little bit of the rib cage now. Feeling down the oblique, just trying to get clear with everything. Remember, you're a designer. You're an artist. You draw, you express, you paint, but you're also a designer of the pose, a designer of the position, a designer of the look and feel of the bone structures, and the look and feel of the musculature as well. So you are in control of your idea. It's not unlike a product designer, a graphic designer, a visual communications designer, an environmental designer, designer of automobiles and moving kinetic machinery. We're designing the figure through our knowledge and exclusively out of our imagination, our head. It tests our knowledge. What do we know? What do we need to work on from different positions? Certain positions get easier. Other positions get wickedly hard. I would say this one is an intermediate to more difficult position because of the movement of the upper torso and the back. So feeling out the scapula, starting to get a little cleaner or clearer with it too as well. The arms come up. Basically just drawing what you see with the thumbnail sketch. Coming up. Feeling that out a little bit. Feeling the leg now through, just to put on all the parts. The ending drawing, I don't go deep into the leg. I do add the bones, adding the head a little bit. Okay, now working on the back and the upper trapezius area now. So getting kind of clear about what I want to do. That's going to overlap that back of that skull a little bit. You can see I'm going to start to feel my way through that because I've got really nothing to rely on. Actually, I didn't rely on anything for this, the skeleton or the écorché. I didn't have them with me. Feeling around the back, in through there, up and over, a little bit where I think the trapezius is going to break. And you're going to see me struggle through here for a while. You're going to see me like the idea and then kind of wipe it away and sort of change it. That's what I like about these Carbothello pastel chalk pencils, is they're wipeable on this big newsprint 24 by 36 inch size. In European and Asian, I don't know, or South American, everybody except the US, we're so different. I don't know what that size is, but it's much bigger than A2, about 3 times that size. So you can see where I kind of wipe it away and I feel my way through. That's okay. Make your mistakes and make your changes, and feel your way through the anatomy. It's a very intuitive kind of approach, just kind of a natural way to draw, and drawing from your imagination. There's no model. There's nothing to refer to. So what do you have? You have yourself to refer to. So I'm thinking about, remember that big hulk of the trapezius as it attaches to the back of the skull. It's two areas around the C7 cervical vertebrae. Now look what I do with the movement of the spine. Look at the change I make design-wise. So if you notice in the lower diagram, the quick little thumbnail sketch, I'm not satisfied with that. I'm like, okay, let's see what my design does for me. And I'm giving it more of an S-curve. And now I'm starting to find the rib cage through all of this, and setting on an idea that I like better than I do now, and that's important to see. So the 10th rib I'm starting to set on. It's starting to come together now, a little bit more like I want it to, I think. Remember, I'm overdubbing this. So that 10th rib area, roughly up now to the ending point, connecting back to the thoracic spine, down to the 10th and 11th and 12th, and kind of group them together here. And so that I like that position. That's not going to change. So I give more of a dynamic curve to the spine, and then I come down, and the spine we're twisting, and we're ending up with that thoracic area. Now I'm feeling my way down through into the pelvic region. So I'm going to change this box too. I'm going to move it a little. I'm going to move this ilium over on the left over a little bit later. So I'm finding the sacrum. That's a big change. You're going to see that change, that sacral part. So I'm finding where the lumbar vertebrae, the largest of the vertebrae, move down and attach into the sacrum, and that's going to change the crest. But then I see that I rubbed it out, and I'm like, that's probably still too high, and so I move it down a little bit, just intuitively, without having, you can measure, but when you start to get into perspective and a full view, all the measuring you start to rely on your intuition. That's why we build up knowledge. So now I start with the right crest, the iliac crest, and then bring that box over, that bowl over, and start. Look how much I've moved the pelvis. So can you see my first pelvic idea of where I wanted it, and then how far I moved it over to satisfy a different view, and hopefully a better view than what I had down on the paper before that. So just locating the ilium and the ischium, I just kind of group them together. That's the total hip bone. Working with the acetabulum there, roughly, of where I think I want it. And then we'll pull out the femur. We'll pull up the femur here and let it come up. Thinking of its idea, then getting the neck, and then the trochanter. We can't forget the great trochanter. Curvature of the femur to the condyle, and then condyles in perspective. So we're looking at it from a lateral view. It's up in the air somewhat to our perspective. So we're going to see a 3-point part of a condyle, that curve through, and you're going to see me move it over at the end too. So be mindful when you're inventing that you can invent quite a bit right out of your head. Getting the condyle for the tibia, feeling where the fibula would be. And I realized that the fatter part of the back of the tibia is at the medial side. So I changed that. You can see that I'm like, oh, that's wrong. And so I changed that, just testing my knowledge. You can see me, this is a great for instruction. You can see me make mistakes and then, or challenge myself, is that the way it really is? And I'm like, no, that's not correct, because we need a little space where that fibula fits through. That's pretty hardcore anatomy, or drawing the figure. You get into the figure later on and you draw what you see, and this is all about feeding that knowledge to help you draw what you're seeing and where. And then if you want to invent figures out of your head, you want to go to that. When I was in art school in LA at Art Center, I had one professor, Bern Hogarth, for a semester, who had been doing, he was in his early 80s at that point. So if you don't know who he is, you look up Bern Hogarth, and you're probably familiar with dynamic hands or dynamic heads or figures. And so he taught us, how to draw from imagination. We had competitions at the end of the day that were pretty brutal, actually, but this helped a lot. And he had a particular, cubic kind of style that was really, worked for him in comic books. And it's the same relative idea, just a little bit different look. And style is not as important when you're drawing as imagination. Imagination, but also knowledge. If it looks great, no matter what the style, that's fine. Now, take a look at the rib cage, the spine, and look how now I've left the right side much more fuller. There's more mass to it. And take a look at my thumbnail sketch, and I've corrected that, because in perspective that would not be the case. It's the left side of the rib cage is moving back over and around. So I'm just getting a feeling of where these ribs might come out. They're real rough. Getting that spine in through there. Trying to get set for laying the scapula and the muscles on top of that, where I want these, or I think I want the ribs to be. But the rib cage, the girdle of it, that's the most important part. The bottom and the top, where they come together. Feeling a line now where I want to place the scapula. You'll see me change that a little. That's kind of a longitudinal, latitudinal, in this case latitudinal kind of line to help me out. Thinking a little broader for the lats. Gonna go up the arm a little bit and get some of that information. Just gonna flesh that out further. Not really important at this point in time. Everything is just pulling. That lat's gonna pull up to that humerus, up and around the front side of it. Feeling this back now, so this arm is going to be different. To make it more dynamic, to play against that spine, I'm going to pull the arm back in as if it's getting pushed and turned. That's why I wish I wound up with the head coming back to the left. But as for a diagram, it works. But I think it's great to see. You can critique yourself, and that would be my biggest critique. Is I never got a good head position, and that kind of would have helped, both teaching wise and also for just a cool position. So now laying on the scapula, and I changed where I wanted my geographic position, drawing the acromion process up there. Okay, getting that scapula to come back, and then I get the glenoid cavity, the back side of it, not the open side, the back fossa there where the infraspinatus, the teres major, will fall. And then I have a latitudinal line that finds me the other one. Now this one, the left, you can see how it's going to get squeezed. Everything is going to get squeezed. So it's going to get a narrower view of those muscles bulk. So I'm going to pull the scapula in. It's going to get a little bit more turned to its side. And see how it's going to get bulked and squeezed and narrowed. There's the glenoid cavity coming down, and there's the scapula. And so it's kind of starting to push a little bit now back towards us as well. Underneath the scapula, finding the split of the spine, kind of the end of the discs, C7 cervical vertebrae. So you have to go back and find it through that. That's why it's good to use different color chalks just so you can see it. And then the dark there is just charcoal. And then these parts of the trapezes, as they attach up into the occipital region, remember the splenius is underneath those as well. But what we're concerned mostly as artists is with the trapezes. Going around the C7 a little bit, the C7 pops out, 7th cervical vertebrae quite strongly. So I'm trying to figure out, okay, how do I want those heads, the two sides of the trapezius, to connect into the skull? And they're going to get bulgy here, really bulky. Look how bulky they are. So that part is moving around to the medial clavicle on the right side, and then the other part, like I just showed there, attaches to the acromion process. And of course, I break a pencil. That would not be a lecture if I did not break at least one pencil. It's kind of a rite of passage now. It's like if I don't do it, there's bad luck. So that's what's happening. These are bulking because of the stress on the head. These are really getting squeezed and pushed back a little bit. The rhomboids underneath from the lateral part of or the medial part of the scapula, are pushing to the spine and kind of pulling back a little bit. And so they're going to get bulky. I kind of make an indication here, the rhomboids here, the minor there, and then the major down below as they attach there, and then to the transverse processes in that area of the spine. So we can see that. Getting that muscle form to work for me. Bulging, that's still the trapezius right over there, just getting it to push over. I get a little of the deltoid, I think, here in a minute, just to show it. A little bit of the shoulder. Yeah, coming through. We haven't talked about the deltoid yet in this video. So that pulls over. There are 3 heads to the deltoid. We'll talk about those. Here we're seeing the scapular and clavicular part of it just a little bit. Mostly just the scapular. And it creates, with the deltoid, it creates that little triangular window where we see the infraspinatus and the teres major a bit. There's the humerus just a little bit in the camera, just to show that out. It just extended like the thumbnail sketch. Latissimus dorsi now, coming down in through and over. Remember that sheathes over a little bit of the scapula right through there. Deltoid there. The end of the scapula there. Coming down, that's the trapezius, all of that, and the sacrospinalis erector spinae underneath it. That can give it a very bulky look, depending upon the model and the pose. Contouring over, using a little bit of tone in contour line to help define form. Latissimus dorsi up. Remember, it attaches to the tubercle of the humerus on the front side. It's kind of a sheet. And it starts to give now bulk to that right part of the rib cage. We won't see really much of the serratus anterior. We'd see more rib, probably bulky rib. And so that kind of hulks around. You can see that hulking. And just stretching the latissimus dorsi over like so. And now it's hitting into that oblique, so it's contracting on this side. There's where the oblique is attaching. Okay, and then the lat comes over that. So we've got 2 or 3 things going on at the same time. You'll be able to work efficiently as you work through. Try to work more than one at the same time as you see them work together. So now you see the lat coming over. It's that shape. And you never see that strong line, that cape-like line coming over, but I just draw it anyway because it's important to see what we're thinking. And there's the trapezius there and some erector spinae underneath it. The humerus bulging out there. And that's going to come back towards us and downward to the end of the condyle to get to the ulna and radius connection later on as they connect up. And we haven't talked about those yet. Trapezius over here is going to get pulled and buckled. It's really stressed as those rhomboids are helping to pull back the scapula, or now the shoulder girdle, towards us and downward. It's like somebody's grabbing the person's left hand down by the buttock and really pulling it back and twisting it. That's kind of what I'm thinking about. So defining it through there. Remember the trapezius attaches it on that spine, down onto, now underneath, and onto the aponneuroses of the thoracic vertebral area, and they'll come together and they make it kind of an arrowhead shape. But look how dynamic they are. There's bulkiness and there's hulkiness. I'll make more of an issue of that as it comes through. You just don't want to be satisfied with the flat diagram. That's not going to help you because you won't see it that way in a model, unless the model is standing stiff. Just filling out the tip of the trapezius now. Coming down, and it's curving into the spine. It rests about 8 or 9 costal rib. Teres major. It attaches up close to where the latissimus dorsi is. On the humerus, on both sides, resting in that bottom corner of the scapula, the teres major, right in through there. Can be very bulky, almost like a Nike shoe symbol. And they attach over there. Now grabbing the bulk of the lat on the other side. I give a little space from the rib cage because there's cartilage, and it could be I lost my train of thought. The muscles underneath there, underneath the scapula, the serratus anterior. There you go. Too much to think about. Lat coming down to the oblique. We show that oblique to the left, and the lat comes down through it and over. And then it also is right in there with the erector spinae. So that's our next step, right? They sheathe over now the pelvic area, the sacrum, right in through there. So now we're getting clear what that sacrum really, look how much I changed it. It's amazing how much that changed. And that can do that when you're drawing out of your head. And then the downward thrust of the sacrum into the coccygeal area, and then over to the ischium, where the biceps femoris and the semitendinous and membranous will attach. And then, of course, the glutes will attach through the iliac crest and the back part and down to the sacrum and up and around. Now going back. Here's where it could get confusing. Like, what do I define further? Well, in diagrams, you kind of emphasize everything. And then when you draw for knowledge and for finish, you underemphasize areas that you need to. So I'm taking the iliocostalis muscle of the erector spinae, and remember, as it comes up, it attaches to these ribs, right? And it can be very bulky in here. It can take on many different shapes depending on the model. And then it separates into the iliocostalis, which is more medial on the left side of my hand there. And then going back and defining those little areas of tendon connection to give that erector spinae a kind of a multi-stranded look of stalks, feeling the rib cage through the latissimus dorsi. You can feel it through there. The lat can be very thin sheeted. We're working on through here. Transitioning now. into more definition of the trapezius, sacrospinalis, up through the spine, really defining that rut. So right in through there is the spinalis muscle. That's the last part of the erector spinae, closest to the spine, the spinalis, and it's smaller. And then the iliocostalis on the other side. Now we're on top of, or closer to the rib cage actually, and the lats are on top of this, but they can come through because the latissimus dorsi can be very thin. So I define that, then I come back up a little bit to the back further. So now coming down to the back and cleaning up a little bit, starting to get into the cleanup process of the trapezius heads there as they attach back into the occipital region through ligaments and the nuchal ligament, excuse me, not nuclear, nuchal ligament in through there. And so just contouring around those forms, feeling the contour, try to get some value, some contour line turning and going for us and through there. Now these really bulk out now. So we've got this bulking up, that trapezius part that goes to the clavicle, and then we've got the other part that touches and attaches to the acromion process through here. That's what I'm doing there now. Underneath the deltoid a little bit, comes in certain heads of the deltoid there, the femur head, and through here. Just defining underneath there. So now coming down and starting to define the lat further, teres major, cascading across. Remember, the major shape of all this is on a bowl, a barrel of the rib cage as it's turning around, barreling through. And then the next major form of that is all the muscles that we group together, all of them tend to generally come to the spine and barrel out towards the lateral part of the figure. It's like two major cylinders. Bulk of the lat there. Feeling that kind of push, or it could be the serratus anterior up above it coming underneath. Feeling that bulge now of the rib cage jamming into the oblique area, giving us that crunch of the area of the contraction there. A little bit, maybe the oblique lines coming through and over. Defining on down the oblique over through there. And underneath, as we pull through, meaning we've got a little shadow to play in through there to get that feeling over to the lat. Now that lat ends where I just do that line over to let the oblique really show through, but it comes together in the model. You won't see the difference, but in our knowledge we can acknowledge the changes a little bit, getting that filled out there. Coming through here, getting the erector spinae muscles just defined through a little bit. We've pretty much got everything we need now in our study, so I'm just defining a little bit further just to get it clear for you. Erector spinae, iliocostalis, and the longissimus there. Defining through iliocostalis, that's the erector spinae. These muscles, all kinds of views, different lighting, different models can take on very varied shape formations that can go all over the place. The trick is to locate, if you know your diagrams, you know where you're at, you can start to make them look believable. You can tell when an artist doesn't, and they just try to go for it without any knowledge, and it looks like just it looks like a bubbly pizza cheese, right? Or what is it, bubble bath, something. It looks netherworldly, it doesn't look correct, and that's a problem. And so when you know your locations, you can say, oh, well, that's the erector spinae, and well, look how they're really flexed here. They're really in flexing here. In other areas, they're extending as well. So, all right, I think we've got everything we need now. I'm just continuing, and I'll just let it fade out as I draw. Thanks for watching, and now the next step is to practice this. Get this diagram under your belt a little bit, and start to make it happen for yourself, and take these diagrams slow and add knowledge to them. They're meant to be testers for your knowledge beyond just the simple front, back, and side view. Okay? All right, I'll see you guys next time. You guys take care. Bye-bye.